Hi everybody, my name is Emmanuel and in this video we'll be talking about borders in CSS. Now borders are a simple yet a complex topic. We're gonna go through what the hell do I actually mean by that in this video, and it's going to be of medium length, the video. So let's get into it. The first property that we're going to check out is going to be border width. And this does exactly what its name implies. It will define the width of that border. And we can define the value in pixels, we can define it in EM values, in REM values, and we even have some more arbitrary values like thin, thick, and also medium. But as we learned in the color section, that's not the best option to use. And for the scope of this video, we'll be using pixels. So let's start with something like 10 pixels and let's see what that does. I'm refreshing and nothing happens. And the reason why nothing happens is because we need to have at least two values. We need to have the width defined, and we also need to have the style defined. Now, the style in the first case we will define as being solid, and it's going to be a pure solid border, and in this case it will default to black because we didn't define what colors should be. We also have dashed, which will obviously make a dashed border, and if we take down the width to something like 5 pixels, then we'll actually see what that does. We also have dotted, which will make these dashes a lot smaller, so it's going to be a dotted border, not a dashed border. And we have other options which are, for example, groove, which is a funky, weird, kind of 3D-ish border styling. I don't use it, I never used it, but it's good to know that it's there. We also have outset, which is going to give this embossed feel to the item. And we also have inset, which is going to be the opposite of outset. Of course, is going to appear that the element is pushed in. But mostly I think you will be using solid, dashed, and dotted. Now we also have a third main property, and that is border color. And the color can be defined in any of the types that we have seen in the color section, and in this case I will just go with red because it's faster to write. So that's how it looks, and these are the three main values that you will need to add a border in CSS. But you might be thinking, can you write it quicker than all these three properties written on 3 different lines? And the answer is, of course you can. And if you just write border, and if you list them in the order that we wrote them, so if you define the width, then you define the style, and then you define the color. Let's comment these out and save it, and let's see if this works. And it does, because it is supposed to. Now, that was the simple part of borders with style and color. Let's go a little bit further into how we can customize them even more. Let's say that we just delete everything that we have. We go to our default value. What if we want to have a border of 5 pixels, solid, and red, but we actually don't want all the borders to be red? Let's say only the top to be red and all the other ones to be different colors. Now, how do we do that? Well, as we saw before, the red is actually optional in this case, because before we could have seen the border without the red color defined. So the way we could do that is we could say border color, and if we write red, then that's going to apply it for all four borders. But if we say red, blue, green, and yellow, and we refresh, okay, green was not the best option because let's just say pink. now we can see that all of our borders have different colors, and the reason for that is we defined the general width to be 5 pixels, and we said that we want all of them to be solid, but we want all of these sides to have a different color. Now you might be wondering, what's the order? Of course you could see it here, it's red, blue, pink, yellow. So if you go red, blue, pink, yellow, then that makes sense. But just remember, this will always be the order in which these items will be styled. And to actually show that, I will write the class of animate for the box, and I'll refresh. I made this quick little ugly animation. So when you style borders, you're always going to start with the top, then the right, then the bottom, and then the left. So it's always going clockwise, starting from 12 o'clock. Like we just did in this example with the color, the red is the first attribute, then red being the first value will be the top. Then we're going to have blue, which is going to be the second value, which is going to be right, pink bottom, yellow left. Okay, boom, 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 and boom. So that is the order in which these things will pop up. Now let's take the animate class out of there, and let's uncomment this. Another nifty little trick when you want to write borders, and this will apply for margins and paddings and some other values. Remember in the color video when we said that we can define the color of hex in shorthand. So if you write 0F0, it's going to be the equivalent of writing 00FF and 00. So this is a shortcut. So 0F0 is a shortcut for this. For the borders, we have the same. If we say that we want the border to be red and blue, we are actually saying that we want the top and bottom to be red and the right and left to be blue. So if I refresh, something went wrong. Oh, because I didn't define border color. Now we can see that the top and the bottom is red and the right and the left is blue. So when you know that you're going to have these kind of pairs, so top bottom is going to be the exact same value, then you can just write like this, and the first value is going to be top bottom, and the second value is going to be right left, or left right. But in this case it would be correctly to say right left, but it doesn't really matter. So those were a few shorthands. Now let's do a quick recap before we go into the more advanced border topics. So you learned that we can write border values in shorthand, or the border property in shorthand, as being border, then comma, then we define the width, and then the style, and then third value, which is optional, is going to be the color. Fuchsia, yes. And then we made a beautiful dashed border. So that's about it for the basics of the border. And now let's go into some more of the complicated stuff. Before we go into that, I want to make it 5 pixels and solid, and let's make it let's just leave it at black. So I'm going to delete that so we can actually see what's going on. Then we have another interesting option, and this is, if I remember correctly, it's a CSS3 property, border radius. And you define this in pixels, percentages, ems, and rems. And we can say, for example, 10 pixels. And when I refresh, all of my corners are going to be of a 10 pixel radius. If I say 10%, then it's going to be actually the same amount, because our width is 100%, 100 pixels. So it's going to be about the same value. Yeah, it's going to be the same value. So that's border radius. But what I wanted to say in advanced topic is, what if we want to have our borders to be different radiuses and different colors? And that's when things can get a little bit out of hand with borders, because you have a lot of options. You have, for example, you can write border top, and you can see in my autocomplete that we have border top right radius, border top left radius. We can define something only for the top right. Let's say that we want this to be 50%, and maybe we want the border bottom, I don't know, left radius to be 50%, and then we're gonna have this leaf kind of a box. So this is what I meant when I said that borders can become complicated, and trust me, they go even more complicated with pseudo elements. And when instead of defining a color as being green, you define it as transparent for only a few of them, and a lot of other stuff, but we won't be getting into too much of those right now. But just know that you have these top, bottom, left, right radiuses, and you also have colors for that. Let's say border left, and then we can see that we have border left style border top. We discussed top left radius and bottom left radius, but you can define a lot of these properties with their afferent values in great detail. So if we want this one to be 2 pixels, then we refresh. It's going to give kind of a dynamic feel to it. We can add another border right with 2 pixels, then we get a more interesting, kind of an interesting effect. So you can do all of these kind of really small tinkering with the border. And this was the point where I was trying to get, that by this borders can become complicated. We can also say border bottom right, I think color, and then if we say transparent, then this doesn't work. Why does this not work? So that didn't work because I made a small mistake, and you cannot go that deep with the colors. For example, we could go bottom color would be transparent, and then this part would disappear. But you couldn't say bottom right should be transparent. That was my mistake, I'm sorry. But you can get a lot of effects, and with the transparency you can go really crazy with this. And what I mean by that is, let's just delete what we wrote, refresh, and let's say border radius is going to be 50%. And this is one of the things that I've noticed I've noticed recently for some apps. So you can make a perfect circle really quick, as you just seen, if you define the border radius as being 50%, and you can also write it 100%. You're going to get the same result, but correct, it will be 50% because you're going to round out the top right corner, and 50% then you take from the bottom until the middle of the element, so which is 50%, so you're going to get a perfect circle. But one thing that's being done is border left color RGBA 0.2. Then if we copy paste this a few times and we change it to from the right and for the bottom, and then we say for the top we want it to be instead of 0.2, 0.8. So before I go and actually show you what I've done, I made a border of 5 pixels solid. I made it round by adding the border radius of 50%, and then I defined the left color to be a very transparent black, the right color and the bottom color to be the same, so 0.2 opacity, but the top color I wanted to be a little bit more towards matte. So when we refresh, and let's take this ugly green outside, we get this. Now imagine we had an animation. I'm not going to do that now because it's outside of the scope of this video, but imagine we had an animation to this, and if we're not zoomed in that much, then we can imagine this as being a very nice spinner. So let's add 15, or maybe let's go with 20 pixels. So I refresh, and you can imagine this spinning being a very simple loading animation. So which means you don't need any extra images in your code. You don't need images, sprite sheets, and so on. I went maybe a little bit too far with this example, but I thought that you might want to see all the things they could do with the different properties in borders. You just need to start being creative with them, and then you can get some really amazing results. I think that was about it for this video. Let's quickly recap. The border property, you define width, style, and then the optional color. Border radius was very obvious, and then you have all these border bottom right and bottom left radiuses, but mostly you'll be tinkering with different combinations of these depending on how complex you need your design to be. So that was it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one, where we will be talking about margins. So have a good one.